What's up, YouTube? It's Heretic here. Welcome back as we take a look at Regice Glaceon Garbodor. This is another deck from Standard that I feel like has some anti-meta potential, barring a couple of matchups, namely those against Rainbow Road and Raikou Electrode. One of those being somewhat meta, the other being pretty rogue as far as decks go. But anyway, this is good against the bevy of EX and Mega Evolution and Stage 1 decks that you might see in the format. So we've got 4 Regice as our primary attacker, 120 HP single prize basic for 2 energy, a water and a colorless. Ice Beam deals 30 damage with a flip for paralysis. And the real star here is Resistance Blizzard for a water and 2 colorless. You deal 70 damage, not a lot, but during your opponent's next turn you prevent all effective attacks, including damage, done to Regice by Pokémon-EX. So this is big, obviously, in a bevy of EX and Mega Evolution decks in the metagame. And then you have Glaceon-EX for the same cost of 1 water and 2 colorless. Crystal Ray does the same 70 damage, but rather than shielding against Pokemon-EX, it just shields against evolved Pokemon. So this works against Mega Evolutions all the same, and then also works against Stage 1 decks like Vespiquen, Zebstrika, which would otherwise be a very bad matchup for this deck. And Glaceon is able to turn that in our favor. Also has a bit more HP. Second Bite is an interesting first attack for a water and a colorless, dealing 20 damage plus 10 more damage for each damage counter already on your opponent's active Pokemon. Not too shabby. We have a 2/2 Garbodor line. Combine Ability Lock. Glaceon and Garbodor together can win us the Greninja matchup. And then 2 Shaymins for draw power just to round out our Pokemon line. So we'll go ahead and get into our item cards. We got a 4/2 Crushing and Enhanced Hammer split. Lots of energy denial to go with our denying attackers. A lot of decks like Yveltal will be dependent on either Fright Knight or Oblivion Wing Yveltals or other generic non-EX attackers that they are forced to include for such a situation, and can be extremely beneficial if we can just target down the energy on those Pokemon in particular. I have 2 copies of Escape Rope, just as a way to switch out if we go against Jolteon, having a couple ways around. It's just overall more useful card than Pokemon Ranger, I feel like. And a lot of high retreat costs in the deck. We can't float everything, so Escape Rope comes in handy there. We have 4 Ultra Ball and 4 Vespiquen, just the normal standards. We get into our supporters. 4 Sycamores. We have 2 Ns. Looks like 4 Sycamores. We have 3 Ns. 2 Lysanders, 1 N more than normal, but just like my Yveltal deck from the League Cup that I won, I just like having the consistency since we don't have Trainer Mail. And then we have 1-ofs of the same 4 supporters as well that I played in my Yveltal Garb list. Team Flare Grunt, which is mainly for the Yveltal matchup, as well as any kind of mirror match or something close to it you might see. Pokemon Center Lady, brilliant against a lot of small damaging attacks and stuff like Greninja as well. Olympia, again, high retreat costs, more ways to get it out of there, and a little bit of healing. And then Delinquent, just for Parallel City and to drop your opponent's hand size down. Just another really, really good card in the format right now. We have a 3/3 split with our Pokemon tools, Fighting Fury Belt and Floatstone. Fighting Fury Belt on a Regice up to 160 HP for a single prize Pokemon that walls against all Pokemon EX is really, really, really good. And against stuff like Greninja and Vespiquen, you make it difficult enough to hit your Glaceon already. When it has 210 HP, at that point you basically just laugh at them. So lots of fun stuff you can do there. And then 4 double colorless and 7 water energy to round out the deck. No max elixir since I opted to go the hammer route instead, be a little more disruptive. So we are going to go ahead and take this deck for a spin and see how it fares against the current meta. Okay, so those typings, looks like either a Vespiquen or a Rainbow Road. 2 matchups we really don't like. Particularly don't like Rainbow Road because it is a basic Pokemon, non-EX, that is hitting. Vespiquen we can use the Glaceon to fight, and we have energy removal outs that can at least, you know, help us try to drain double colorless away from our opponent. And so he flips over a Klefki, which would make me guess Vespiquen, which is definitely the better of the 2. And instead it just starts out with 2 Klefkis on the board, nothing else. So we're going to go ahead and throw that into play. We're going to Parallel City I don't mind taking the damage output hit there, and then we're going to go ahead and Professor Sycamore for a fresh hand, and we'll go ahead and Ultra Ball here as well. And we can go find a Glaceon-EX, which is going to be our preferred attacker in this matchup. So we can get that ready, and then we'll go ahead and pass the turn. And let's see, plenty of supporters already sitting down there. So we do see he benches a Combi, gives it a double colorless, so we're going to go ahead and play a Crushing Hammer, knock that out of there, and let's see, I think we just Sycamore again. Try to find, okay, well, we didn't find our energy, so I guess we go ahead, we can put Garbodor into play. Go ahead and throw another water energy on there, and we'll just pass the turn again. And if all else fails, it'll just be another Sycamore. Alright, so we do find the Float Stone here. Debating on whether or not I want to use that. Let's go ahead and Escape Rope and see what he decides to do here. If he gives us the other Clef Key, or if he actually gives us the Combi. So he does give us the other Clef Key, so we're going to go ahead and switch to Garbodor. We can arm it with a Float Stone, and we'll go ahead and Versus Seeker once again, pick up that Professor Sycamore, and grab another hand of 7. Of course, now we find our double colorless. 3 Versus Seekers already gone. Still have not seen a Lysander yet. So let's see what we want to do here. We can go ahead and put that down, and we can use Crystal Ray here and just pick up a very close to a knockout. This thing does have 70 hit points, unfortunately, and our own Parallel City is kind of messing with us right now. And so he Lysanders up the Regice. Now we have another Float Stone in our hand, so we can use that to get Regice out of the active. And then we can go ahead and throw an energy on there just for later. Another Crystal Ray, so we can knock out the Clef Key there. Go ahead and continue forward. And then, of course, if we do ever hit Delinquent, we'll be able to knock our Stadium out and start doing a crap ton more damage. But he just goes ahead and forfeits the game. And that is one of the big problems there with Vespiquen Zebstrika decks. I'm assuming he runs Zebstrika in there, or just Vespiquen in general, is that without Battle Compressor, there is a lot of inconsistencies with the deck. It's a lot slower than it was before, but just a lot of Pokemon in the deck causes a lot of dead drawing. So we see an example of that there, where he is unable to get going with supporter cards, and we are able to take the game just like that. So we're going to go ahead and try another one. Okay, so it looks like we went against Greninja this time. One-shot Alex, okay. And I've played this matchup a couple of times. If you can keep the Glaceons going again, it's usually pretty solid. This, once again, is not a matchup where you really want to use Regice much, since their entire deck is non-EX. So we will go ahead and flip the coin, and we'll take the first turn advantage. Ugh, gross. Nothing there. Alright, so that does indeed look like Greninja. Not that there was much question. So we'll go ahead and reshuffle. And alright, so we get a Regice to start, which I guess isn't terrible. We can Ultra Ball into a Glaceon. And we also want to get the Garbodor set up, obviously. It's another big part of this matchup. Okay, so place the prize cards, and we see Talonflame and Froakie. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to throw a couple of hammers out, and we're going to go find Glaceon-EX from the deck. So once again, relying on Glaceon rather than Regice. Go ahead and get those into play, get Glaceon down, get an energy on it, get a Fighting Fury Belt on it, and then get another Ultra Ball here. And I don't even think we're going to worry about the Parallel City here. We're just going to go ahead and try to get Trubbish down as well and get it ready to go. And we're going to hold the Float Stone until next turn, only in the event of a Delinquent, which we would have to see a Stadium as well as the Delinquent itself come down here. So not overly likely, but still possible. We do see a Bursting Balloon go on to the Talonflame. So that's something else we got to be careful of, is Bursting Balloon damage. We're going to see Dive Ball here for another Froakie. And then following, assuming an Aero Blitz here, we will be able to end any searched cards out of our opponent's hand, or at least we would have been before our opponent just end us. So we'll reshuffle. We'll get a hand of 6. We do find the double colorless. We also have a Vespiquen, so we can still retrieve the end that's in our discard pile. We do see plays a town map here. We see a couple energy, a couple Sycamore, a balloon, and a Vespiquen. And we take a 40 damage attack. Now we got a really nice hand here because we can escape rope Glaceon into the active, work around the Bursting Balloon, and then end those 2 cards searched off Aero Blitz right back into the deck. So our cards really fell nicely here. Can't really complain about that. And we'll be able to knock out one of those Froakies in the process. So we're going to go ahead and play the Rope. And we'll bring Glaceon into the active spot. Go ahead and toss a double colorless energy on there. And then we will Vespiquen for the N. And play it. Alright, so we find the Garbodor. What we don't find here is the Float Stone, but that's okay. We can always try to dig for it down the stretch, or we could actually just do it this way right now. Toss these 2 cards out, go find a Shaman, and then we can actually, we could try to throw the Fighting Fury Belt on one of those things, but I think we wait on that. Go ahead and grab 4 cards with the Shaman. We do find the Float Stone there, so that will activate the Garbodor. And then we can start using Crystal Ray. Take a knockout, and we're able to ditch our opponent's Bursting Balloon. And we do find the second Glaceon, and so we see another forfeit. Wow! So we were able to lock our opponent down on the second turn with a Crystal Ray plus Garbotoxin combo. And so, needless to say, Greninja doesn't have much to do after that. So we are going to go ahead and do a third game, and maybe we'll hit something that's more EX based this time. Anyway, let's check it out. So we get paired against Some1sPC, so we'll see if this is Russell Lepar directly, or if this is one of his teammates. Or maybe it's Bill. So it is really cool to be able to play against these guys. And we see Fighting and Darkness together. Interesting. So we'll see what that ends up meaning. Okay, so we'll start with Regice. And he starts with a Shaman. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do an Ultra Ball here. I guess we'll try to get Trubbish set up. And we get an energy right there, and we can go ahead and Sycamore. Okay, so we find some decent stuff here. We'll get a Fighting Fury Belt there, and I think we're good at that point. Hold on to some stuff for next turn. Alright, so we see an Ultra Ball come down, discarding an Olympia and a Lysander. And it's another Shaman. So we'll see. Looks like, okay, so we're going to see a Lysander. He's going to force us to switch to the other Regice. And Shaman is going to set up here for 3 cards. We already see 2 Lysanders in our opponent's discard pile. Noteworthy. And so let's see what follows the second Shaman. Alright, so there's another Ultra Ball. We see, was that a Heavy Ball? No, it was a Silent Lab, okay. A Silent Lab and a Darkness Energy for an Oblivion Wing Baby Yveltal. So that'll come down onto the bench. We see a Darkness Energy attached to it, and then there's a Fighting Fury Belt to go with it, and a Passing of the Turn. Alright, so looks like we can Escape Rope here, and he can choose whether he wants to send up another Shaman, or if he wants to send up the Yveltal, which is the choice. And then, so we can just switch, attach, go ahead and throw another Trubbish down. We can put a Float Stone out, we can put a Fighting Fury Belt down, and then Shaman for a whole bunch. Alright, so we get an Enhanced Hammer, which doesn't really help. The Crushing Hammer is nice, and that is successful as well. And then it looks like next turn we'll be able to go ahead and go for a Sycamore. We can wait one turn to get the most out of our energy here, and we get an 80 damage Resistance Blizzard off. So we get Enhanced Hammered. So bye-bye Double Colorless. And we'll see if he has another energy. And he's got a Versus Seeker, even better, but he's only able to retrieve a Lysander with it. Drags up the other Regice. And so we don't have a foolproof way to get that out of the active just yet. So we'll throw a Water Energy onto there. And then we can go ahead and Verse Seeker for this Professor Sycamore, since we don't want to play an N when he's got no hand. Alright, so we find a few things here. We could parallel, although it would be into an awkward situation. So I think we will just go ahead and pass. He's already got 2 Shamans down, so we don't need to really be too urgent about getting Garb into play. And he top decks an N! Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, again, at least that wasn't a Sycamore. But that did get rid of our double colorless energy, and we see a second Oblivion Wing Yveltal come down, and with an experience share on Shaman. So again, interesting stuff. Not really sure what we're looking at right now, but we will see a Darkness Energy go on to Yveltal, and then it looks like an Oblivion Wing worth 40 damage. Wow. Now we should be able to get Garbodor going. We see a Fury Belt on the other Baby Yveltal. And that is a little bit frustrating to see Fighting Fury Belts go onto those things, as we have to 3-shot them now. We do get a Team Flare Grunt, but we don't really have much to work with as far as using it. So I think what we go for here is we'll just throw these two. We're not really going to make use of any of these cards in our hand, and we're just going to go find Garbodor and get it set up. Not really sure whether that's going to mean anything down the stretch, but we're going to definitely try. We do find our double colorless energy, so we can throw that into play. And Resistance Blizzard. Or we could Ice Beam, actually, here, which might not be a bad play. Go ahead and try to paralyze him. And we do succeed. Okay, so paralysis ensues. And now we can go for a Resistance Blizzard KO next turn. And that saves 40 hit points, which is big, as we'll be able to Pokemon Center Lady off of that Verse Seeker we're sitting on. So a Darkness Energy goes on to the other Shaman. So each Shaman, it looks like, well, one has an EXP share, okay, and the other one has a Darkness Energy. So we'll keep attaching to Regice. We'll go ahead and do a Resistance Blizzard here for the KO. And we'll be able to grab a prize card with that. So Ice Beam coming through there. Pretty big. And we'll go ahead and pick up a prize card. We get a pretty useful prize there in Olympia. Able to heal some damage and also swap out our Pokemon. So the other Yveltal, of course, comes to the forefront. We see a Darkrai go onto the bench rather than an Yveltal. Here's another Oblivion Wing for 40 damage, and we'll see an energy go on to Darkrai. Alright, so that can be a thing now. And we can Versus Seeker here to grab the Pokemon Center Lady, which is going to heal 60 damage off of our Regice. And then we can attach to the other one, and we will Resistance Blizzard here, 80 damage. And at this point, taking the hits from this little guy will be worth it, since he was not able to get close enough to a Darkness Blade, which is really the reason you do the Ice Beam in the first place. So we'll take 40 again. Another energy. Well, no, I guess not. He doesn't have any in the discard pile. So we're just going to go ahead and Resistance Blizzard here again. And just kind of continue to slowly accumulate damage. So he puts a Float Stone on Darkrai. And how clutch would a Max Potion be right now on his end? Really don't think a deck like this would run Max Potion, but it would be pretty crazy. So we'll take another Oblivion Wing. So this guy has, what, 2 energies on it, and there's a third one over there. Okay, that's fine. No reason to play anything. Once again, we will just Resistance Blizzard, take the knockout. Yveltal goes down. We claim a second prize card, and we've got extra energy in our hand. We've got Parallel City if we need it. We just drew a Crushing Hammer. We got Float Stones. Got pretty much whatever we can use right now. A couple of things we probably won't use. And he puts another Darkrai down, gives it an energy. We'll see if a Lysander follows us up. Instead, he opts to retreat into Shaman here. So that's a thing. And we're going to go ahead and try to Crushing Hammer one of those energies off of this Darkrai. So we get that off of there. I'm going to go ahead and throw a Float Stone there. I'm going to throw one over here as well. And another Resistance Blizzard here will hit for 80 damage, awaiting him to just simply retreat again. And we've got 2 VS Seekers left to be able to Lysander, which would be enough to hopefully set us up for the game winner, especially since he didn't retreat. So we can Resistance Blizzard here, take the knockout, and be 2 prizes away from winning the game. With everything on our board either being a capable attacker or being Float Stoned, having a Float Stone attached to it, so free retreat. So we got a lot of versatility now. Garbodor to take away the threat of Fright Knight if indeed he runs it. And this is really just feels like total control on the board. This is a lot of stuff. He's EX dependent right now. Regice is able to take control. And I did not realize actually this thing has 3 energies because of the EXP share. Wow. That's pretty crazy, but I don't know that that really means much. So we're gonna stick with Resistance Blizzard because if we Ice Beam and we get Tails, we would die. Although it might have been worth it to go for the game since we have a second one on the bench. But he can Sky Return Shaman to conserve a turn, but eventually we're just gonna end up playing an N here off of a Versus Seeker, unless that's our last 2 prizes, and that'll win us the game. Yeah, okay, there's a Seeker right there. Because that will just shuffle everything back into our deck, preventing us from decking out. And so unless he's got a Pokemon Ranger handy, better start getting a little creative over there. So he's got a lot of cards in hand. Only 1 Verse Seeker gone. Could definitely go for a Lysander. But he wants to make sure he's got the knockout, I think, on board. So we see we've got 4 total energies. He can attach 1 more. And he'd be able to Lysander up Shaman or Garbodor, but the Fighting Fury Belt is real on the Regice. So we do see he puts the EXP share onto the Shaman. And okay, do we have a Flare Grunt maybe? Yeah, we could use the Flare Grunt. I'm gonna go ahead and Ultra Ball into the deck here and see if the 4th Versus Seeker is in here, which it is. Okay. So we can fail the search, and we can go ahead and use a Team Flare Grunt to knock that energy off of Shaman. Basically taking away the Sky Return threat, and then we can Resistance Blizzard. So now he would have to attach and simply retreat to avoid losing the game, and he would have to bring a Darkrai up. And that's really all the leverage we need on him right now. We don't actually have to take this knockout on the next turn. Like, he can play a switch, sure. But the bottom line of it remains that he can't take that Shaman off the board this turn. So, not that we can really capitalize off that too much right now. It's more just to prevent him from being able to continually sponge up damage. And we're going to force him to bring up the other Darkrai here pretty soon. So slowly he's going to run out of resources. We do have another Versus Seeker left in the deck that we can use to grab an N and put all of our cards back. And I really, again, I just really don't see a whole lot that he can do. Unless he's got something that we're not seeing right now. Maybe I'm missing something, but like right here, we'll see a Sky Return, which is going to be no damage. He can bounce back to the back to his hand, but not a whole lot else he can do there. There's only so long he can keep these Darkrai's like going like this, especially since a Vespiquen Lysander would effectively end the game. So he plays a Seeker here instead and grabs an N, knowing that we still have access to one. We do see a Silent Lab. So he's going to go ahead and do the N-ing for us, knowing that we're not going to deck out anytime soon. So we acquire 2 cards, and we do hit the Delinquent. So we'll be able to make a play there. So we can Delinquent him 3 cards out of his hand. Not a bad option. He's going to Ultra Ball here. We may be able to get his entire hand with this thing. Does grab a baby Yveltal, which is one of the things capable of laying damage down on us. Running 3 copies. Pretty darn solid. We see a Max Elixir here, which it looks like is going to grab an energy. So he is going to have an attacker ready to go, and he's going to be able to retreat right into it and deal 30 damage, which will leave us 30 away from knockout. And he's able to accelerate an energy out of the discard. So he's got 6 energies on the board. And we can simply drop the rest of his hand with this Delinquent. And getting 1 prize isn't really going to do a whole lot for us here, but we are able to force him to discard a Professor Sycamore. So that's pretty big. And we were able to lay 80 damage down right there. Now, we could have tried to paralyze him, but the idea behind, or the concept behind that, if it were to fail, of course, being that we would be stuck in a situation where we would have 1 Regice left, and it would not be able to finish this Yveltal off next turn the way we need it to. So we do end up with one of our Yveltal, or maybe with one of our Regice finally getting knocked out, but we do have another one waiting on the bench. So we can just bring up the Shaman for temporary. And we find another Garbodor, which I don't even really care about, to be honest. We're going to go ahead and we're just going to Resistance Blizzard here again. Take a knockout. Grab another prize card. Yeah, I don't even really care about putting more of those down. We find a double colorless, which is kind of cool, but it's not really going to do much for us in the time being. So he brings up the Floating Darkrai, which is no doubt going to retreat. We'll see if he opts for the Sky Return here. He's got 3, 5, 10 energies on the board. Holy cow. Alright, so Sky Return is going to happen. That's going to send that back to his hand. The other Darkrai will come forward. All we need to hit is a Lysander here, which we know the Vespiquen is in the deck. For now, we will continue to just pelt his Darkrai's with Resistance Blizzard. And he is more than welcome to try to make that play with the Shaman. Sit it there, give it an energy, retreat into it, and we'll just continue to lay damage on it. No point in trying to paralyze it when a Tails Flip essentially loses us the game. Especially when we know there's a Vespiquen just waiting in the deck. So another Silent Lab comes down here. He's gonna delinquent it right off the field, so we're gonna go ahead and throw away our 3 cards. And that's perfectly fine. Still really not too concerned. Something pretty crazy would have to happen for that for there to be a real concern here. We're gonna go ahead and get 80 more damage on this Darkrai. And a long, drawn-out game. Gosh, oh my. And the other nice thing about this board is that while he could KO all of these 3 things, he would net a total of 4 prize cards by doing so, which would not be enough to win him the game. So he discards Regice. That's the fighting type in the deck. So he uses it to keep Darkrai going, a lot like we've seen with Xerneas Break and the Snorlax. And We'll probably see a retreat here into Shaman. We can see a Sky return. He may wait a turn. Looks like he's going to opt not to. And then he's going to bring up the fresh Darkrai. And we draw Olympia, so again, not really a whole lot we can do with that. So we're just going to keep attacking, keep pressing for more damage. One Vespiquen in the deck, which is going to turn into a Lysander at some point that's going to win us the game. Doesn't really matter if it's the last card in the deck. It's still something pretty crazy would have to happen for us not to win the game there. And he doesn't even have an energy on this Darkrai. So this thing may just end up going on its own. All 3 Darkrai's now with 160 on them. And so he does forfeit the game right there. He doesn't have a way to get it out of the active. So an interesting deck concept. Regice is able to hold the fort down against a field full of Darkrai's. We overcome 3 Oblivion Wing Yveltals with the help of Pokemon Center Lady and a second Regice. So we are able to make that work, and that is Regice, Glaceon, Garbodor. So opting to go the Garbodor route rather than the Slowking route, which I have seen Slowking in some of these decks, but ultimately it comes out pretty well. Regice serves its purpose, and that is what I have for you guys today. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Cheers.